And we're live. G'day, I'm Scotty North, your host of this show, Xenium Pro, where we talk about all things accountants, brokers, and planners. This is a brand new show for us. This is an extension of our Xenium.Live show, where we talk about money, finance, and property. So I'm pretty excited about this. It's been a show long time in the coming, and with the whole fantastic events of this year, I guess you could say that we took some time to get it right. So I'm pretty pleased about that. What I can say is that I have a very special guest today, and my guest for our very first Xenium Pro show, he's got a pretty impeccable list of accreditations to his name. So I'm going to run through just a few. He's been the General Manager of Perpetual Private Clients, Head of Advice and Investments at ANZ Private Bank, Managing Director of Retire Invest, General Manager of Asgard Group, not the one that Thor's involved in, National Manager for Securitor Financial Group, Principal of Mercer Global Consulting, and he's previously established his own financial services business, Unison Financial Group. I'm told he knows accountants better than they know themselves, and that he was instrumental in the implementation of decimal currency in Australia. The CEO and co-founder of Fiduciary Financial Services, I welcome Mr. George Haramis. George, how you going, mate?
Very well, Scotty. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Thank you.
Look, I'd heard you'd had about 30 years financial experience, but I mean, you obviously go way back to when they changed from pounds, shillings and pence, mate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll take that as a compliment. I've been around. I've just had a lot of jobs. I can't keep down a job. I've just had lots of jobs.
You had lots of jobs. All right. Well, that's pretty good. Well, look, we're going to talk about a few things today, but I'd like anyone who doesn't know you to get to know you a bit better. You were actually, you've done a lot of things in your time, right? So, do you want to give us a brief rundown? You say you got 3 minutes for those of you who don't know you to give an intro about you.
Sure. Look, as you've said, I've been in the industry for over 30 years. A lot of that time I've spent in key roles in running AFSLs or dealer groups or working with accounting firms across those 30 years. Specialised in distribution and turning around businesses and developing programs that we could use with accounting practices and their clients. In the Unison business, which I had for about 8 years before it was sold to Findex, we dealt with around 30 accounting firms, and I thought we did a pretty good job in building great relationships with those guys and helping their clients across a whole host of financial services. The thing that really interested me in working with Unison was that we couldn't deliver advice solutions to their high-return clients or people that weren't earning, $130,000, $140,000, $200,000. They just couldn't afford the advice processes and the costs. So about 2 years ago, a colleague of mine and I decided to establish Fiduciary, which I'll talk about in a minute. But Fiduciary delivers digital scaled advice, online advice to people at very, very affordable prices. And we have a whole host of client groups that work with us, and through a couple of channels also working with some accounting firms.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'm going to delve a bit deeper into that in this show, because there's some things there that tickle my fancy. Now, for those of you who are just joining us and are definitely watching us live, and it's perhaps your first show, if you comment in the Facebook, YouTube or LinkedIn comments section on this video, then we will see it. So if it is a broadcast video on YouTube, comment there and we'll get your comments, and you can ask George a question live. So that's how it works. It's pretty interactive, so I'd appreciate if you jump in there and do that. I'm sure George would love all the curly questions as well.
Thanks.
So George, we titled this show Single Topic Advice for $300. Now, I've done accreditations in financial planning and mortgage broking, and I reckon that's not what we learnt back in the day, right? There was a lot of things around the advisory section, and there was a lot of commissions based back when I did things. But I'd like to really see how you guys unpack that and how it integrates well with the accounting firms.
Let me start by giving you some background to the establishment of Fiduciary. So 20 years ago, I worked in a business called Snowball Financial. And Snowball, Snowball was established to deliver online financial advice to consumers. We received a grant from the government of $500,000 to build an algorithm. We worked with 3 ex-NASA scientists, I kid you not. We developed the algorithm, but the tech wasn't right. It wasn't as good as we needed it to be to really progress with the online planning. That business eventually morphed into Shadforth's, which was taken over by IWF. The rest is sort of history. Around 2 years ago, 18 months ago, I bumped into a colleague of mine from Snowball, and we thought it'd be a good idea to review what we did at Snowball, because the tech was much, much better. And we believe there was a real gap in the marketplace for offering people within a certain income band access to financial advice. And that led to the development of Fiduciary. I've got some slides which I wouldn't mind putting up, Scotty. So is that possible to sort of take you through a bit of a process, and then we can...
Yeah, sure thing. All right, let's see how we go here.
Okay. All right. So the aim of Fiduciary is to deliver affordable advice and accessible advice to the mass market, not to the high net worth, not to ultra high net worth people such as accountants, but to the mass market. And I'll explain what we mean by mass market. The business so far has been progressing to the point where we have a number of large organisations who have significant client bases that are clients of ours. H&R Block is the most significant. All up, we're the preferred provider to around 1.5 million people, which includes H&R Block's clients. A lot of the clients that we work with are really interested in dealing with one solution at a time, one topic at a time. The idea of walking in and getting a comprehensive financial plan for these people is just not on their radar. They can't cope with so many issues at once, and they certainly can't afford the $4,000 or $5,000 that it costs to produce a comprehensive advice plan these days, particularly after the Royal Commission, where there was a lot of talk about compliance. Advice was in the spotlight, the cost of advice, and the cost of advice is increasing all the time, which means that for many people, the chance of obtaining advice is certainly out of reach. And for a lot of existing advice clients, their planners are increasing the cost to service because of these compliance costs post-Royal Commission. Look, we also work with a number of other employers in corporate superannuation. The team is Australian-based, a lot of years experience. Before you say it, most of those 90 years are my experience. Scotty, we are a full Australian business. These are some of the organisations that we're working with at the moment in delivering advice through various mediums.
That'd be fun advising Qantas right now, George.
Well, the ones on the left were the ones we worked with in the past. I put that up there just for some logos to be recognised, but we have got a lot of experience in dealing with national employers, large groups. In fact, P&O Australia was our first one back at Snowball, which went to the board in England to get sign-off. So we do have a bit of history with some large groups. But just to put it into context, Fiduciary focuses on mass market, and that is 80% of Australia's working population. So these people earn between $40,000 and $129,000, $130,000. They can't afford the traditional $4,000 or $5,000 that a statement of advice costs. They know they've got gaps. They know that they need advice. They don't have the inclination, education, knowledge, or time really to look at these in detail. It's too complex for them. So they're more interested in issue-specific advice, i.e., I need to consolidate my super. How do I do that?
Right.
Should I invest my $30,000 that Auntie Mary gave me into my superannuation or put into the mortgage? That needs an advice document. We don't go direct to the public. We work with third parties, or it's a B2B focus, hence some of those logos. But we do leverage their trusted advisor branding, whether it's accounting firms or people like H&R Block or the employer. These people, those people can't provide advice due to regulatory requirements. But we leverage the branding and the trusted relationship to work with the individual client. And I can tell you that we've done quite a bit of research on this. people are prepared to pay for single topic advice as long as it's up around the $300 mark. And they're quite prepared to do it online. I mean, if there's one thing that COVID has, there's a silver lining in the COVID cloud, is that people are actually going online to do lots of things. Apart from online shopping and ordering from Dan's and JB Hi-Fi, they are willing to go online and meet with their advisor, which is what we're finding in our business. So let me just take you through the points of difference, some of the specifics, and then we can have a bit of a chat about this. So we focus on mass market. So the typical iReturn client is our focused client. I remember in the Unison days, the partner firms would always ask me, George, what about my iReturn clients? And my standard question back to them was, well, can they afford $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 for a financial plan? No, they can't. They can't do that. So we couldn't help those people. But through technology now and the ability to develop online capability where we can deliver advice digitally, people in the iReturn category or the mass market, or anybody really, but our target market is the mass market, can afford advice because it's less than $300 per topic. We cover a whole host of areas. Not everything can be categorized as scaled advice or single topic. So retirement planning or pre-retirement planning, they're complex areas, so we can't do single topic advice for those. But superannuation, investment, insurance, lending and finance, direct property, we can deliver single advice solutions. The standard statement of advice is only 6 to 10 pages long. It's priced between $150 plus or $270 plus GST. So we're in that sort of price range of under $300. We implement for a minimum of $55. And as I said, we do it digitally. Turnaround times within 48 hours, not 4 to 8 weeks or 12 weeks is the case. And you can see some of the items up there. I won't go through them all. But the whole structure is designed around engaging people who know they need advice, have never been able to afford it, but now they can through the breakthroughs that technology has made. And we're using technology to deliver these topics fairly quickly. And
so that was going to be my question, right? I mean, because obviously there's a fair bit of price difference between like a full advice doc, as you mentioned. I mean, and obviously the only way to deliver this type of advice at that price is digitally, right? Because you have to digitize it.
It's the only way. As I said, we couldn't do it 20 years ago because the tech wasn't right, but the tech is moving so quickly at the moment that it is right, and it's becoming more and more, it's becoming more and more advanced. So we're thinking about doing lots of things going forward, but currently we're about 2/3 of the way through the digital build. We've already completed about 60% of the calculation engines that we need to. We've launched a lending and finance document which shows people whether or not it's in their best interest to refinance, to restructure, use different structures for their lending and so on. And by the end of the calendar year, we'll have superannuation, investment, insurance, and a fairly comprehensive questionnaire that we provide people that provides them all sorts of information back as factual information. We've held some focus groups in the past, and these are the key outcomes of those focus groups. People are split into two camps, the under 45 and the 45 plus, or the pre-retirees. You can see there the types of topics on the left-hand side that many of the clients are looking to find solutions for, whether it's through debt, savings, super, and so on. Whereas on the right-hand side, the topics are slightly more complex. But the feedback we got was that a lot of these people that have tried to do it themselves would be quite happy to look at our single topic modules to progress to more complex pre-retirement planning. And the general feedback we received from all the participants was that, hey, this is cheap. We're quite happy to pay the $150 plus GST or the $270 for a single topic. It's convenient. I can do it in my own time. It's flexible because I can go online. It's targeted because it's focused on a particular topic. And we are governed by regulations, by the Corporations Act as an AFSL. We have our own license. So,
right, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So am I jumping too far ahead to say, okay, so how does some of our industry partners like accountants and brokers, etc., how can they interact with you? I mean,
Yeah.
do you have a way of interacting with them and their clients?
Look, we're geared up to deliver the advice solutions en masse. And one of the things that we look to do was work directly with accounting firms. It is a difficult situation because we've got about a dozen large partners that we're already working with. One of those partners, the Xenium Group or Xenium Partners, deals directly with accounting firms, and they have some pretty good systems that they use with the accountants. We work with Xenium directly, and they take on our services and they deliver those services to the accounting firm. So that's the way we would work with an accounting firm. Happy to chat to any accountant about the way that works, but that's the main process. Yeah, so that's how we're geared up to work.
Yeah, okay. So for an accountant who has a range of clients, or someone says, I have got 30 grand from, an inheritance or something, what should I do with it? How easy is it for the accountant to go through that process?
Look, it's pretty easy. We have links for clients to jump onto through our landing sites, and they can determine whether they will utilize a superannuation SOA or an insurance or lending SOA. Conceptually, we try and break this down for the client to make it as simple as possible. From a marketing or messaging perspective, we have what we call our money GPS system. Everyone knows what a GPS is. I'm sure it's stopped many arguments taking place in motor cars these days. So there are some different points that people start with, whether they want to start with superannuation or insurance or investment or lending, and we help them along the way. We work out their pathway through that money GPS, and the reality is they pick the topic that they need the advice for when they need the advice. So it could be one topic this year, it could be 3 topics next year, but they know that when they do this, they know that when they pick the topic, it's not going to cost an arm and a leg. It's affordable at $297 or $150. The $150 is pure robo advice, where it doesn't need the interaction of an advisor. The $270 SOA is for a slightly more detailed or complex, if you like, statement of advice. They have 30 minutes with one of our relationship managers who will review the findings or the recommendations of the SOA. The SOA is issued by the licensee, by Fiduciary, and they will validate the choices the client has made, review the outcomes, and facilitate the implementation process. It's as simple as that. And when someone completes the questionnaire, that all goes through a calculation engine. An SOA is produced. You can either go directly to them as a robo advice piece, or they can schedule a time to meet with one of our relationship managers for 30 minutes. And so the 30-minute meeting will provide them with access to a relationship manager, and that costs $270, including the SOA plus GST.
So the lower price is for the robo advice, and the higher price is with having a human involved. I mean, it's like a hybrid, mate. It's like you could call it cyborg advice, that one, because it's kind of like digital and person at the same time. I'm all with the names, George. I could help you here with marketing.
I might pass that on to the marketing people, Scotty.
Yeah, all right.
I might not, but I might.
Yeah, no, look, I appreciate that. Hey, George, we've got a question from YouTube. Just while we're on this topic of pricing, do you think that digital advice will increase the number of younger people accessing financial advice rather than waiting until they're in their 30s or 40s? Well, thanks whoever asked that on YouTube, Mr. Mardant Group, because I'm in my 30s I'm in my 40s just, and I consider myself a younger person, so I don't know what sort of comment that is. That's ridiculous. But no, I think the premise is, George, will it make it more accessible for more people in a greater age range?
Of course. My daughter is in her early 30s. She does a lot of homework before she goes to see any advisor. She goes online. I think in this digital age and in this COVID age where people are focusing more on online activities and engagements, there's no reason why people will not go online to do this. In fact, it should provide them with a great opportunity to do it, whereas before they didn't have that opportunity. It'll just mean people's access to advice becomes a whole lot more easy and affordable. And that's what this is about. This is about providing access to affordable advice using a medium which is quick. You don't have to travel to an office. You don't have to have someone come to your home, and you can do it online. And if you choose to speak to a relationship manager, you can, but you don't have to if all you want is the advice. We're not here to say, if you receive the advice from us, you have to implement through us. We'd like you to, as any normal financial advisory business would, but it's not compulsory. So our business is delivering affordable advice. That's the focus of the business.
Okay, so I'm going to play the advocate in the middle here, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm an accountant. I've got a business operating, and this sounds appealing to me. Perhaps the pushback I'm going to get from my partners or my clients even directly is, well, how can it be any good for $300? Like, how can they do it for $300 when old matey does it for $4,000? Obviously we're talking single topic versus a larger, holistic approach, but there's got to be procedures in place to say, you've got this pretty down pat, right? So what's your answer to an accountant or a client who asked you that question?
The reality is, because it's single topic, we can deliver the advice to people in this mass market. And the reality of people in this mass market category, if you like, let's say they earn up to 129, 130, that's our sort of target range. It makes sense at that point, at that income range, that all their assets are in their own name. So because they're in their own name, they're not using exotic structures like SMSFs or trust structures, then the advice is simple, and we can focus it on single topic. And that's the difference between doing it that way versus comprehensive advice, which is a whole host of topics at once. You have to consider a whole range of issues in a comprehensive advice plan, and there are new guidelines that have come out regarding that through FASEA. With scaled advice, we focus, and it's clearly stated up front, we're only focused on one topic at a time. So we're not concerned about other issues. It's just that one single topic that you want advice on. The licensee is delivering the advice to you. And if you want advice on another topic, then it's a separate SOA that you'll be required to take on. So it's never about comprehensive, it's only about single topic. And hence, in using the technology, and because people's assets are in their own name, that allows us to deliver the advice quite readily, as opposed to a comprehensive advice provider. Where, of course, because you're considering a whole host of issues surrounding the delivery of comprehensive advice and strategies around that, it is a lot more expensive because of the time taken to complete that advice document. And the compliance.
In my head, the winner here is the person at the end of the chain, right? The customer, the end user, however you want to talk to them, because they've got the choice of comprehensive advice, or they've got the saying, well, okay, I don't need that right now. I can just go down this track of a single topic advice. I still need advice, but I just need it about this sort of thing, one sort of topic. And while we're on that, we've got Alistair is dropped in from YouTube, and he says, how does the single topic advice delivery assist in meeting the standard 6 of the Code of Ethics? Alistair, I'm not answering that question because I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to let George answer that one.
Yeah, let me firstly point out, with regard to the way the advice is prepared, it is prepared by the AFSL. So scaled advice is prepared by Fiduciary as the AFSL. The Code of Ethics applies to individual authorised representatives. I'm not a lawyer, but believe me, we've done a lot of work with our lawyers to ensure that we've got this correct. The Code of Ethics is structured to apply to individual authorised representatives. The advice documents and the advice preparation by Fiduciary is via the AFSL, not by the individual representative. Hence, we can produce scaled advice, statements of advice that are not subject to FASEA.
Right. Okay. Got it. Well, I'm glad you knew what you're talking about there, George, because I didn't even know what Alistair was asking, which makes it an exceptionally good question, I reckon. So thanks for stopping by, Alistair. Appreciate that.
It is a good question. And scaled advice is obviously a particular form of advice which is on the radar of ASIC. It's covered by the Corps Act. It's important that people get access to advice. And the great bulk of working Australians cannot afford the ever-increasing cost of advice, which is around $4,000 or $5,000. And I've heard it's sort of up around the $3,000 to $4,000 on an ongoing basis now as well. So it's cutting out a lot of people above that 130 grand mark that can't afford it. So the ability to deliver scaled advice, particularly to PAYG clients, is very important because it's the only way that they will be able to access advice on issues that really impact them, that they know they need advice on.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So, George, we've got another question here, which from Mardant again on YouTube. If I have comprehensive financial advice business as part of my accounting firm, I'm assuming either part or a referral, should I be concerned that your fiduciary offering is going to take away from their clients?
No, it's quite the opposite, because the way we work with other advisory groups, and we have presented our services to a number of other groups, is that we deal with those clients that the advisor unfortunately can't afford the time to spend with them. Those people that can't afford the $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. So we work with orphan clients, and we work with clients that can only afford the $150 or $270 in advice fees. And in some of those cases, we identify full comprehensive advice requirements. So we can't do that, and therefore we liaise with the advisor, and we triage that client to the financial planner to provide the comprehensive advice. So we're actually a support mechanism, if you like, in working with financial advisors. So we're not a competitor.
Okay, that's good. That's a good answer. Now, before we go on any further, was there anything else that you wanted on your presentation to go through? Because I did knock it off the screen before, but if there's anything else you want, I can bring it back.
No, look, I think that provides people with a sort of an overview of what we do. The critical thing for us is that we use technology to the max. We manufacture advice. We adhere to all the regulations subject to an AFSL delivering or producing advice, and we do it in a very, very cost-effective way. Hence, groups like H&R Block and others are working with us to deliver advice to the masses, because they just know that's the only way that those clients will ever access advice. But no, there's nothing else in the presentation apart from those points.
Yep. All right. No, that's good. So is there anything else you specifically wanted to talk directly to the accountant, the people watching the accountants and what have you today?
I guess the critical thing for me is going back to my Unison days, where a lot of the accountants were quite conscious of the fact that their iReturn clients could not access advice because of the cost. I'd like to encourage accountants to find out what Fiduciary does, because we can deliver advice solutions at really good price points for iReturn clients. They can get professional support in areas where they know they need advice, but they just don't know where to go. And I think something's just come up on the screen there. So
well, this is our landing page. I've got the address scrolling on the bottom of the screen, but for those watching, you can see that there, and you can actually see the screen that's popped up. But if you're listening on the podcast, you need to go to www.xenium, that's Xenium.live /pro/fiduciary, and that will take you straight through to that. We'll put the link in everywhere that we post this anyway. So, George, this is the landing page that we've set up for anyone who wants to contact you to find out more.
Great.
Mate, I'm sure that you're pretty open to hearing from people.
I'd love to have a chat to as many people that want to speak to me about what Fiduciary does. The caveat on that is we don't work directly with accounting practices, but through Xenium, we would refer you back to Xenium so they can support the accounting practice in working with us. yeah, but happy to talk to anybody that wants to have a chat about this.
Mate, so it's been an interesting year. I mean, you're in the digital advice space,
Yes.
obviously at the right time, because how much of an impact did the COVID and Corona thing have on what you can deliver? Like, did it have any impact at all?
Look, it had a significant impact, not so much on us, but all our partner groups, because obviously COVID has impacted their ability to work the way they normally do. H&R Block is a national business. It's obviously impacted them because they have over 400 offices that clients rely on to go and get their tax returns done. Some of those offices have been closed, particularly in Victoria. And with the other groups that we work with, just the general nature of COVID has deferred or put back some of the things they'd like to be doing with us. Look, from our perspective, there's nothing like launching a new business in the middle of a pandemic. Maybe I should put that down in my CV, which is it's an interesting one. When did you launch it?
Well,
pandemic.
Yeah, that's right. And why not? I mean, look, I look from a personal perspective. I mean, we've been talking about this show for a while, and I know it's taken its toll on you because we did some photos for this show early on in the year, and that was my photo done in March with George. We had some photo sets, and it's been a rough year for George because that was George's photo in March. And mate, I'd just like to say sorry. Like, I don't know if it's because I live on the Sunshine Coast or if it's my skin or whatever, but I think I've fared better than you this year.
I think you have, and thank you for pointing that out. I'm sure everybody appreciates that. Most of all, me. Thank you. Can you take that off now? But no, look, it's as I said, there's nothing like launching a new business in the midst of a pandemic. I'll have that on the CV at some point. But what it's done is it's validated that part of our business that we weren't quite sure would take off. Will people go online and do this? Will they go online and meet with their advisor? Will they go online and spend money to meet with someone via Zoom or meetings for 30 minutes? And the answer is absolutely they will. And there's more and more of that taking place. So the silver lining is just that. We're busily working on the balance of the digital build, which is quite important to make sure that we deliver all the SOAs going forward. And I'm sure over a period of time we'll come up with different types of structures that we can provide to people to help them get the advice they need. And a lot of people do need this type of advice.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think it's always having the client first focus is what's important, and just having that ability for the scaled version of single topic right up to comprehensive is just great. I mean, it's like the buffet of offerings, right? I mean, it's what people can choose their own way forward. George, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on our first Xenium Pro.
Thank you, Scotty. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for bringing up that very, very old photo. I won't forget that. And I look forward to look forward to being a participant going forward. And look, if anyone does want to talk to us, there's that landing page that Scotty put up earlier.
Yeah, that's right. And look, George, when you want to be embarrassed again, I'll definitely have you back on. I appreciate it very much. So as George said, if you do want to know any more about what George has spoken about today, you can click on the link that's been scrolling, type in the link that's been scrolling on the bottom of the screen the whole show. You can click on the link that's going to be attached to the video that's going to be sent to you or replayed in YouTube, Facebook, and all that sort of stuff. And if you're listening, once again, it is www.xenium, that's Xenium.live/pro/fiduciary. That's FIDUCIARY. And today I've been speaking to George Haramis, the CEO of Fiduciary, and it's been a very good conversation. If you're an accountant or a broker or other partner that wants to know more, click on those links and hit us up via the contact page I've mentioned. Thank you very much for tuning in to our first show. I'm Scotty North. This has been everything for brokers, accountants, and planners, and you've been listening to Xenium Pro.